Okay, let's unpack this. Because, we have this wild contrast to look at today.
Yeah.
You take a guy like Rob Gronkowski, right?
Oh, yeah, famously frugal.
Exactly. He signs this $4 million rookie contract,
Yeah.
immediately locks every single penny of it away, and just lives entirely off a $50,000 marketing advance. Even had a roommate.
Which is brilliant, honestly.
Totally. But then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have Odell Beckham Jr., made well over $100 million during his career, and now, at age 33, is reportedly staring down the barrel of bankruptcy.
It is a fascinating disconnect, really.
It's wild. So today, we are diving deep into exactly why the math of wealth actually has almost nothing to do with your paycheck and absolutely everything to do with your ego.
Yeah, and we're pulling today's insights from a 2026 video by YouTube creator Zach Rios. He basically compiled the absolute best financial decisions people are making right now.
Which is such a good topic.
Right. And what becomes immediately clear looking through this material is that real financial independence, it isn't about hoarding pennies until you're 70 years old.
Nobody wants to do that.
Exactly. It requires this fundamental shift in how we view money and, more critically, how we measure our own social status.
Right. And so the mission for this deep dive is to basically extract those choices, these surprisingly simple, occasionally unpopular decisions that actually work.
Yeah.
We want to skip the get-rich-quick hacks and cut straight through the noise for you.
Because the biggest barrier to saving money isn't that people don't understand basic addition and subtraction.
Right. It's not a math problem.
No, the barrier is psychological. It's that overwhelming, crushing feeling that you are just missing out.
Oh, 100%. You open your phone and you're immediately bombarded by 20-year-olds driving Lamborghinis and filming from these Miami penthouses. And your brain is just hardwired to look at that and panic. You sit there thinking, oh my God, everyone is doing better than me.
But that panic is based on a completely manufactured reality. The source material shares this incredible anecdote that captures this perfectly.
Oh, I love this part.
Yeah, so there was this guy working a standard office job, right? And he wins a joke bet with his boss. The prize was that he got to borrow his boss's luxury car for the weekend.
Which, first of all, is a hilarious prize.
It really is. So he spends the whole weekend taking these highly curated photos of himself with this car, and he posts them all over Instagram, heavily implying that he owns it.
Naturally.
But then, a few days later, his boss finds him at his desk looking just incredibly depressed. So the boss asks what's wrong, and the guy says, everyone is doing better than me. I see it all over Instagram. Just look at these guys.
Which is just staggering when you step back and look at it. The boss literally had to look at him and point out the obvious. He had to be like, you are that guy. You were faking it 2 days ago, and the people you're looking at right now are faking it today.
Right, it's a complete illusion.
It's like society is trapped in this financial funhouse mirror. It completely warps your perception of what normal, sustainable success actually looks like. But, if comparison is the thief of joy, how do we actively stop ourselves from counting other people's money? It feels impossible when it's shoved in our faces all day.
Well, the mechanism to stop it requires redefining what a loss actually means to you. Because true wealth is almost always quiet.
Quiet wealth. I like that.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the cyclical nature of the modern grifter economy. You have people renting that Lamborghini for a few hours, taking the photos, and then using those photos to sell an expensive, useless course on how to get rich.
Oh, the fake gurus. They're everywhere.
Exactly. They are literally funding a fake lifestyle using the credit cards of people who are desperate to achieve that same fake lifestyle.
It's a Ponzi scheme of ego.
Pretty much. So the mindset shift Zach Rios advocates for is realizing that passing on an expensive vacation or, a luxury purchase, it isn't a loss at all. When you save $100, you aren't just locking it in a vault somewhere. You are actively purchasing $100 worth of your own future independence.
That reframing changes the entire equation.
Yeah.
You aren't giving up a weekend in Miami. You are buying the right to not stress about rent next month.
Exactly.
And that desire to project status to strangers is exactly what drives some of the most destructive purchases we make. Like, let's look at vehicles. The urge to pull up to a stoplight and have the person next to you think you're successful is bankrupting people.
Oh, vehicles are arguably the largest wealth destroyer for the middle class.
For sure.
The source highlights the immense financial power of simply keeping a paid-off car. You see people trading in perfectly reliable vehicles for brand new trucks that cost anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000.
That is an insane amount of money for a car.
It is, and it's almost always entirely financed at terrible interest rates.
I just struggle to understand the logic there. I mean, unless you are working in construction, you are paying $100,000 to haul a couch maybe twice a year.
Right, it makes no sense.
The strategy laid out in the sources is so grounded. It's just like, keep your paid-off Mazda, keep that 2014 RAV4. If you actually need a truck for a specific weekend project, you can just go rent one from a hardware store for $50 the 2 times a year you actually need it.
Because the mechanics of vehicle depreciation are brutal. The second the tires of a new car touch the street outside the dealership, it loses thousands of dollars in value.
Literally thousands, instantly.
Yeah, so the math heavily favors older, reliable cars. If you absolutely must buy, the focus should be on vehicles historically proven to hold their value. Things like older generation Tacomas and 4Runners.
Yeah, those run forever.
They really do. There was one individual in the source material who saved $8,000 simply by buying a used car with just 10,000 miles on it.
Because someone else took that initial depreciation hit. They basically paid $8,000 just for the privilege of being the first person to sit in the driver's seat.
Pretty expensive seat.
Seriously. But, the financial bleeding doesn't just happen at the car dealership. It happens right on the couch. We need to dissect the silent drain of overconsumption.
The subscriptions.
Yes. The source talks about the necessity of canceling those phantom subscriptions, that $150 a month just disappearing from your account for services you don't even remember signing up for.
It's so common.
But there's a specific behavioral intervention mentioned that I found brilliant, and that's purposefully closing your online big box store accounts.
It is a masterclass in adding friction to your life.
Right. Because retailers spend billions of dollars trying to remove friction. They want one-click checkout. They want your credit card saved on file.
Exactly. By actively deleting those accounts, you rebuild that wall. If you want something, you now physically have to find your keys, get in your car, drive to a store, walk down the aisle, and stand in a line to buy it.
Which sounds exhausting, which is the point.
Right. That process completely kills the dopamine-driven impulse buy.
Right.
You can't just have an idle thought on the couch and have a product shipped to your door in 2 days.
And that same weaponized impatience is why people pay extra for overnight shipping. I mean, before that existed, humanity survived just fine.
We really did.
Unless it is a critical medical supply, you really do not need a novelty coffee mug delivered to your house in 12 hours. But, this brings up another tactic that retailers and banks heavily promote, which is the balance transfer.
Yeah.
Moving existing debt to a new credit card that offers a 0% APR for 18 months. Now, hold on. I have to challenge the source on this one.
Okay, let's hear it.
Wait, isn't that just playing with fire? Like, if I'm paying 20% interest on a credit card right now, moving that balance to a 0% card seems like basic, responsible math. I'm stopping the bleeding. How on earth is that a trap?
It totally looks like responsible math on paper, but behavioral economics tells a completely different story.
Okay, how so?
Well, APR, or annual percentage rate, is just the yearly interest you pay on borrowed money. When banks offer you 0% APR for 18 months, they aren't doing it to be helpful.
Obviously not, yeah.
Credit card companies have run massive statistical models on human behavior. They know that when you remove the immediate pain of interest, you relax. You treat that card like a get-out-of-jail-free card.
So it's like a false sense of security.
Exactly. It functions like a financial treadmill. You feel like you've hit the pause button on the belt because the interest stopped accumulating. But you haven't actually changed your running speed. Your spending habits remain the exact same.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that.
And the credit card companies are patiently waiting for month 19 because their data proves that a massive percentage of people will not pay off the principal in time.
And then what happens?
When that introductory period ends, the machine kicks back on at double speed. They hit you with a 20 to 30% APR retroactively, trapping you in a much worse situation than when you started.
That is deeply predatory. They're essentially betting against your discipline, and statistically they win.
Every time.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered the physical traps, the trucks, the online shopping, the credit cards. But the source takes a sharp turn here into decisions that we rarely even classify as financial choices.
The emotional ones.
Right. These are emotional decisions that carry massive, binding financial obligations.
Mm.
Let's look at the unexpected landmines, starting with something that is going to make a lot of people angry. Pets.
Yeah, it is an intensely unpopular opinion, but mathematically the source is correct. Getting a dog in your early 20s can absolutely devastate your financial trajectory.
I can already hear people shouting through their speakers. Society conditions us to view getting a puppy as this beautiful coming-of-age milestone. You get your first apartment, you get a dog.
It is a beautiful milestone, but it is also a 12 to 15-year binding financial contract. The reality is that dogs come with a highly unpredictable set of expenses.
So true.
High-quality dog food has become wildly expensive. You have daily daycare costs if you work in an office, severe restrictions on your ability to travel, and emergency vet bills that can easily hit $5,000 out of nowhere.
Yeah, one swallowed sock and you're bankrupt.
Exactly. Furthermore, young people are usually renting small apartments, which is a terrible environment for a large, active animal. The source makes a very harsh but necessary point. Taking on a living creature when you cannot comfortably afford the care it requires, it borders on neglect.
It's an emotional purchase masking a massive financial liability. And speaking of emotional purchases with massive liabilities, the source argues that the person you choose to marry is the single biggest financial decision of your life.
Without question, marriage is, at its core, a legal and financial partnership.
Right.
If you enter that partnership with someone who has a fundamental misalignment in how they view money, maybe they are a chronic spender while you are an aggressive saver, or you handle financial stress in completely opposing ways, the foundation is cracked from day one.
And when that cracks, it breaks everything.
Yeah. If that misalignment eventually leads to divorce, the wealth destruction is catastrophic. You are looking at tens of thousands of dollars evaporating just to pay lawyer fees, forcing both people to start over from absolute zero.
Which brings us to a third landmine, and one that is particularly bleak for young men right now, the explosive rise in gambling addiction. The video notes the state of the industry in 2026, and it's terrifying.
The landscape has evolved far beyond traditional casinos or, casual sports betting.
It's on everyone's phone now.
Right. We are now looking at sophisticated prediction markets fueled by hyper-targeted AI advertisements. The friction has been entirely removed. You can bet on virtually anything from your phone in seconds.
Okay.
The source points out that people are treating geopolitical events, literally betting on the outcomes of war, as if it were an asset class.
Let me just process that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Betting on war. That is incredibly dark. But, here's where it gets really interesting. If we look at these three landmines, taking on an expensive pet, marrying a financially misaligned partner, and falling into the frictionless gambling trap, the mechanics are all exactly the same. They destroy your optionality.
That is the precise common thread. In your 20s, your most valuable asset isn't your bank account. It is your flexibility. Flexibility of time and flexibility of location.
Yeah, being able to pivot.
When you take on a dog you can't afford, a partner who drains your resources, or an addiction that constantly zeroes out your checking account, you instantly revoke your own flexibility.
You're stuck.
You are locked in, unable to take a risk on a new job or move to a new city because you are completely chained to those obligations.
Okay, so we've canceled the impulse buys, we skipped the new truck, we held off on the puppy, and we aren't betting on prediction markets. Is the ultimate goal here just to sit in a dark, empty room, hoarding our paychecks? Because that sounds absolutely miserable.
It does, and that is a critical distinction the source makes. There's a massive difference between being frugal and being cheap. The goal is not zero spending.
Thank goodness.
In fact, being strictly cheap often costs you significantly more in the long run.
The regrets of being cheap. The video had some incredible visceral examples of this. Like one person decided to rent a much cheaper apartment just to save a bit of money, but it was in a terrible neighborhood.
And we know how that ends.
Yep. Within 3 months, their apartment was robbed.
Yeah.
And beyond the stolen items, the rundown environment put them in a constant state of depression. And the worst part? The apartment they actually wanted, the one in a safe, vibrant area, was only $200 more a month.
That is the textbook definition of saving pennies to lose dollars. You compromise your physical security and your mental health for a negligible monthly savings.
It's just not worth it.
Not at all. Another perfect example from the source, there was a guy who wanted to play in a recreational wiffle ball league, but refused to buy proper athletic cleats. He wore a pair of $60 flat-soled black Vans instead.
I cringed so hard when I read this part.
As you should. Because he was wearing skate shoes on grass, he slipped and severely pulled his hamstring.
Ugh, painful.
The physical pain, the lost mobility, and the potential medical bills far outweighed whatever he saved by not buying the right shoes.
Which really begs the question for anyone listening right now. What is your personal version of the $60 Vans? What is that one thing you were stubbornly cheaping out on that is secretly ruining your day, your back, or your peace of mind?
This introduces a concept we really need to focus on: return on investment, or ROI. Frugality isn't about spending nothing. It is about ruthlessly reallocating your money toward things that have a high money spent to life improvement ratio.
Okay, I want to dig into that. What actually makes the list for a high ROI spend?
At the very top of the list is your bedding and your mattress.
Oh, absolutely.
You spend 1/3 of your entire life in bed. Upgrading your mattress is not a luxury. It is an investment in your own physiology.
It changes everything.
High-quality sleep directly dictates your daily energy levels, your cognitive function, and your productivity at work. Spending money to improve your sleep architecture pays literal financial dividends during your waking hours.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And you can contrast that with living room furniture. The source actually recommends buying a $400 knockoff couch instead of a $2,000 designer piece.
Right, because of how we actually live.
Exactly, because the reality of human existence is that you are going to spill food on it. Why subject yourself to a panic attack over a dropped taco when you can just wipe down the cheap knockoff and move on with your life?
It's about buying peace of mind. And the source also lists several incredibly cheap life improvers that just punch way above their weight. For instance, keeping extra phone chargers permanently packed in your travel bags.
That is brilliant. It uses the exact same friction psychology we talked about earlier, but in reverse. If you forget your charger, the friction of having a dead phone at an airport forces you to buy a $30 replacement at a kiosk.
Which is such a ripoff.
It really is. A $5 cable saves you from the airport markup tax. And speaking of niche but effective purchases, the source mentioned those little wristbands you wear when washing your face to stop water from running down your arms.
Oh, people love those.
Anyone who hates wet sleeves knows that a $5 fix for a daily annoyance is an incredible ROI. Same with the bidet. It sounds silly until you buy one and then you never want to live without it.
So true.
But there are also massive upgrades that are completely free, like getting a library card. You can connect it to apps on your phone and instantly access thousands of audiobooks without paying a single subscription fee.
And we must elevate one specific free upgrade mentioned in the source because it carries immense weight, and that's sobriety.
Oh, that's a big one.
Choosing to cut alcohol entirely is a profound financial and lifestyle shift. It immediately eliminates massive bar tabs and prevents those expensive, terrible late-night food delivery orders.
It's 2 a.m. pizza tax.
Exactly. But more importantly, it cures the physical toll of hangovers and the emotional cost of regret. It just hands you your weekend mornings back with total clarity.
It is the ultimate compound interest for your health and your wallet. Now, at this point, someone might be thinking, this is all great, but if I just focused on grinding and making a ton of money, I wouldn't have to worry about buying the knockoff couch or skipping the bar.
People always think they can just out-earn the problem.
Right. But we promise to return to the athletes because they are the ultimate proof that out-earning a bad budget is a complete myth.
It is impossible to out-earn bad habits forever. The source brings up a profound realization from basketball legend Charles Barkley.
What did he say?
Early in his career, he recognized that no matter how rich you are, you only need one car and one house. If you want 2 cars, fine. But the critical lesson was understanding his timeline.
Right, the earning window.
A professional athlete has a massive but incredibly short earning window. You might make millions, but if your career ends at 35, you have 50 years of life left that those millions need to fund.
And that brings us right back to Odell Beckham Jr. versus Rob Gronkowski. Making $100 million is useless if your lifestyle scales up to require $101 million to maintain.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? If $100 million isn't enough to save you from bad habits, what hope do we have? Like, if they can't do it, how can a regular person?
The hope lies in understanding the mechanics of interest. rather than relying on an endless salary. The math is beautifully simple. Whether you have $2 million or $50 million, if you lock that money into safe vehicles like CD, certificates of deposit, where the bank guarantees you a fixed interest rate for a set amount of time in exchange for leaving the money alone, or high-yield savings accounts, the interest generated is enough to live off of forever.
It just passively generates income.
Right. But that mathematical reality shatters the absolute moment you let your ego inflate your lifestyle.
Which is why the source attacks the myth of building generational wealth. People use the excuse of building an empire for their great-grandkids to justify exhausting themselves trying to become billionaires.
It is a vanity project. Statistically, most generational wealth is entirely squandered within 2 to 3 generations anyway.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it disappears. The goal should be securing your own immediate independence. The source uses a brilliant phrase, the more you own, the more you're owned.
That is profound.
A massive mansion doesn't just cost money to buy, it requires a fleet of staff to maintain. 6 luxury cars require specialized, expensive insurance and maintenance. The assets you buy to look wealthy quickly mutate into liabilities that chain you down.
You end up working just to maintain the illusion, and society starts feeding us this illusion so early, the video points out the harsh reality of youth sports.
This is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of parents.
Oh, for sure. You have kids and parents pouring tens of thousands of dollars and literally every weekend of their lives into travel teams, chasing the pipe dream of a pro contract. And around 9th or 10th grade, the reality check hits.
The math catches up to them.
They realize they aren't going pro, and they've wasted years and savings without building a practical backup plan.
It demands an objective look at reality, which perfectly sets up the conclusion of the video. The creator speaks with a bank worker who distills financial survival down to 3 non-negotiable rules for anyone who actually wants to build wealth, rather than just look wealthy.
Let's break those down. What are the 3 rules?
Rule 1. Track your finances constantly.
Which is so easy now.
In 2026, banking apps use Face ID. It takes literally 5 seconds to open your phone and know exactly what your balance is. Ignorance is a choice, and it is no longer a valid excuse.
What's rule 2?
Rule 2. Stop buying daily takeout and coffee.
Classic. But it's true.
It seems small, but the frequency makes it the silent killer of compounding wealth. And Rule 3. Live within your means. The only metric that dictates your freedom is your net profit, the gap between what you earn and what you spend.
It strips away all the Wall Street jargon. And it culminates in this one takeaway mantra from the deep dive today. Choose simple over impressive. Impressive gets attention, but simple gets results. Complicating your life in your 20s by trying to look successful actively prevents you from learning how to actually be successful.
The basics, executed consistently over a long period, will always mathematically outperform a secret hack or, a risky prediction market bet.
Common sense might not be common, but if you apply it, it is a superpower. Every dollar you manage to save, every urge you resist to buy something just to flex on Instagram, you are doing something incredibly profound. You are literally purchasing your own future freedom.
You are buying the ability to wake up one day and do exactly what you want to do without answering to anyone. That is the highest ROI purchase a human being can possibly make.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the real mechanics of wealth, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own. If we truly define spending money as trading away a piece of our future freedom, I want you to open your phone and look at your last 3 non-essential purchases. Really look at the receipts. Did you buy a better life? Or did you just rent a tiny bit